To remain updated with the latest business news, click on the bell icon.
I'm in conversation with Mr. Kabir Suri, who is the president of National Restaurants Association of India. Thank you, Kabir, for joining us on this conversation. And to pick up from what has been the latest order that has been given by the DDMA, and of course, the kind of restrictions that are coming across India, how do you seek of these restrictions with either a full shutdown or a cap on the capacity of the functioning of restaurants?
Thank you for having me today. As you know, we've been obviously functioning with 50% occupancy the entire sort of financial year, and have been under weekend curfew and the night curfews. So for what I'm not understanding is that you've got a few different things that are happening. One, we are focusing on vaccination, so staff is all vaccinated. You see customers entry, you give entry to customers that are vaccinated. And now you're shutting down the industry by closing down Delhi, which for us, it makes no sense because you're anyway sort of restricted with your timings. You have 50% occupancy, your staff is vaccinated, your customers are vaccinated. So by shutting it down, what are we going to achieve? It's only going to lead to unemployment and more disruption to business, revenue loss for businesses, tax loss for the government. And ultimately, who suffers is the consumer. They don't have the ability to eat out, and every business is not built for delivery. There are many businesses that can deliver, but every business has different sort of angles to it. Bars in general obviously do not deliver. There's many cuisines that it's very hard to deliver those cuisines. And the infrastructure is also not there for many, so it's a very difficult situation we find ourselves in.
Right. In terms of data, if you could tell us that what is the kind of impact in dining has seen? What is the kind of percentage fall? Because as we understand, it was around Christmas that the pre-COVID levels were touching back. Am I right?
That is accurate. We were last quarter, quarter three, we were, coming back to where we were. We were seeing some sort of recovery happening. So in Delhi, there's about 95,000 eateries between organized and unorganized. And if I bifurcate that further, there's about 32,000 restaurants that are organized. And how do I have that data? Simply by, using the FSSAI number and the GST numbers, who's the organized player. Now, if there's 32,000 restaurants in Delhi, and these restaurants employ about 3 lakh people, okay? And the revenues, as per historical data pre-COVID, these restaurants generate about 31,000 crores of revenue per annum. So now if you do the math, now, shutting down a business in totality, which is what's happened, Delhi, if I compare Delhi to a Noida, Delhi to a Gurgaon, Delhi's delivery business is far lower than a Gurgaon and a Noida, right? Mm-hmm. It's just the way the infrastructure is built. It's also eating habits, I guess, because there are more apartment buildings in Delhi in Gurgaon and Noida. There's a lot of, people from around India that have migrated into these two cities. The consumption of dining out in Delhi is about 6 times a month, whereas the rest of India is 4.2 times. So let's assume it's 4 times. So Delhi in general has been, NCR in general has been, customers dine out a lot more, compared to the rest of India as an average. So, from a revenue standpoint, I think, obviously shutting down restaurants, we're going to, the dine-in portion of the business, which in normal scenarios would be at least 80 to 85% of your overall business is gone. Now, you're supposed to basically survive on a 10 to 15% of your total revenue that you were doing on a normal scenario. And that is further impacted based on curfew in regard to delivery timings, because you're still not being able to operate on a normal time. And there are other restrictions. You have to get passes made. That has not been streamlined. The other problem is obviously, the infrastructure of staff to get home post doing deliveries not in place. So there's a lot of other issues from an operational standpoint which remains. And is this immediate closure without having the stakeholders involved, without discussing this with us, is again a knee-jerk reaction, because you have to understand there's a lot of things that go into running a business, and we support the government in general, obviously, but and obviously, we need to be responsible citizens, but at the same point we also need to look at what global practices are. We should be focusing more on vaccination, which we are doing, double masking, social distancing. Scientifically shutting down an industry does not provide you with a solution, especially when the metros are allowed to run, the buses are allowed to run, the malls are still open to whatever time they are. The other businesses are open, markets are open. So what does it mean that COVID is only in restaurants and not in any of these other places? I mean, we don't understand what the decision making on this is.
So what is the kind of revenue impact that this decision has been seen? I mean, you could also compare it with what probably COVID wave 1 and wave 2 saw, and maybe what is expected from the wave 3 impact.
So I think, first of all, we don't have clarity on how long this this restriction is for. Depending on how long it lasts, we would probably have a little bit more accurate analysis on, the revenue loss. But in the immediate, if you, like I just mentioned, if in-dining is the year, you divide that by 12 months and you divide that by, if 15% is the generation through delivery. So you're talking about, you're potentially going to be doing maybe 10 to 15% of your pre-COVID sale.
Okay. Now, another wider interest is also on the inflation pressure that's been coming on the food prices. And you see vegetable oil, edible oil, vegetables, the prices have been shooting across last few months. Now, with the new variant coming in, what is your view? Will the restaurants in the industry look at increasing the prices of food, especially now that it's all going to be online?
No, so, I guess inflationary pressures have been there the last 2 quarters. I think we saw an increase in quarter 3, which we just completed. Given the on-ground situation, each business has to obviously decide, what is the right time to, either pass on the costs or, try and let the cost sort of stabilize. Given the fact that we're under curfew, given the fact that we have restricted operating hours, we'll have to, I think a lot of businesses, depending on where they sit in regard to, are they very heavy on delivery, are they not, how long the lockdown lasts, if they're still operating during the lockdown, the restrictions, they'll have to make these decisions. I think each individual business has to make a decision on how they would like to deal with it. But there is inflationary pressures. You're absolutely right. The price of edible oil has gone up. Automatically, that obviously creates the cost of every product to go up. There's there's pressure on vegetables. There's pressure on other items. Also, you have to also understand what is happening is the supply chain has got disrupted. And when I say that, it means that a lot of the suppliers that obviously provide you with goods are themselves struggling. So as a result of that, a lot of these guys are obviously trying to increase their costs so that they can recover the past losses, and also try and sort of stabilize what they're purchasing versus what they're selling. So there's a lot of mathematics that's going on all sides, right? So restaurants need to decide based on where they sit. The suppliers need to figure out where they sit. But ultimately, the consumer that will have to bear the brunt of it, unfortunately, because for businesses to survive, the support of the consumer is required, because you're anyway dealing with depressed revenues, you're anyway dealing with restricted timings, you're anyway dealing with infrastructure which is obviously broken. So you have to balance it all out. So I think each business will find the right balance. But is today the right time to do it? I don't think so. I think it will probably be. We will probably have it. We will probably see it closer to the month of March.
Got it. One last question, Mr. Suri. And since budget is around the corner, there has been a long-standing demand by the restaurants industry, especially, and this has been on the rate rationalization when it comes to the GST part. What is the request you're setting out to the government? What should they be looking into? Because let's accept that this industry has been quite under pressure since the onset of COVID.
Our request remains the same. We've been requesting the government pre-COVID, and obviously our voices have become a lot more determined during the last 20 months, including now. We are one of the only industries that does not get input credit on our purchases, and we're not able to offset these costs. As this is the scenario, and the government is obviously restricted to how much support they can give each industry in general. I think for our industry, the biggest support would be that they give back, allow us to take our input on our purchases, because we've been singled out as an industry. And for example, hotels are allowed to take an input, but restaurants are not. And our cost of operations have increased as a result of this. And because there's so much stress in the system, and because there's so much disruption in the system, this is a simple fix. And it's a matter of the GST Council to make a decision with all the various stakeholders, and having this sort of approved, where we are able to sort of get back our input, so that it will bring the needed liquidity into the system for our survival. Because this is very important if this is sort of executed. We've requested the government. We've sort of reached out to most of the finance ministers across India. We have reached out to the Honorable FM of India, and we've had joint meetings. We've put our points across. We've shared data points. So I leave it to the government, but we remain determined in trying to seek for their support and for what is rightfully ours, as given to every other industry.
Has the government promised to relieve this budget?
The government has not promised anything as yet. The government has said that they are looking into it, and they are considering all the various sort of parameters, but they have not committed anything. No.
Okay. Thank you very much, Mr. Suri, for joining us on this chat on Business Today TV India Today.
If you like the video, do like, comment, share, and subscribe.